Hello and welcome everyone to this week's episode of DoubleDM podcast, where we will be talking about world building and laying fundamentals for your world locations, people, and places. So you can work in way better ways and if more efficient ways even. But first, as always, we are here to discuss what happened to us this week, what TTRPG sessions we had, what fun we had, so you get a little bit caught up with the DoubleDM doings. Let me first of all ask my co-host Niels the age-old question that we've all known for so long. How the fuck did you pull that off on Sunday?
Well, actually, I don't fucking know. And I can just throw that question right back at you.
No. That was your fault. Please explain.
Yeah. I know it was my fault, but it kind of wasn't all my fault. Because I planned for some other stuff to happen, theoretically. But then you came along and said, yeah, well, no, fuck that. Okay, now I have to deal with this. How can I deal with this? Okay, yeah, that sounds good. That sounds like fun. Perfect. And then this happened. That's about how I pulled that off. Pulling shit out of my ass, as per usual. So you enjoyed it, I guess?
Yeah, you could say that if you want to understate it.
I can't speak for your enjoyment of the session because I just know I enjoyed it really, really like a shitload, you know?
Yeah, I can just throw that back. It was quite an interesting and amazing sessions. Probably top 3 of all-time TTRPG sessions for me.
Interesting indeed. Let's say it like that.
Right next to sessions like the ending of a 7-year and a 10-year campaign. It wasn't even an ending of such a campaign. It was just a session in such a campaign.
I feel honored. I feel really honored. Thank you.
I can't make a top tier list of sessions I had, but the campaign enders that I've had, the 2 really big ones, the one session where we TPK'd, and this one, I don't know which one really takes first place and second and third and fourth. I don't know which order they are, but they're all basically the top 5 with some other fifth that I would have to think about now, which I don't do right now.
To be honest, if I might do so, I would throw one of the Titans Call episodes in there.
Okay, which one?
The first was pretty fucking amazing, or the first 2, or the one in the museum. I really enjoyed that.
Oh, that's a spoiler. That's gonna go in there. People are gonna enjoy waiting for the museum for 3 years.
Yep.
No. I am gonna say it here. I'm gonna put myself on record and say Titan's Call only has like 5 episodes that still need to be audio corrected out of its first half, not having the best audio quality, and I'm trying my best to make sure that the episode is as listenable as I can make it. If that is done, I just have to add music to all of these episodes, which won't take too long. And then basically we as an internal team will talk about a release date. And I'm surely hoping that it's still gonna be this year. Maybe November, December. Well, those are the only 2 months left. But and if I have those first 15, 16 episodes edited, Titan's Call is just gonna come out. Because why the fuck wait any longer? We've already waited long enough.
But glad you enjoyed the Sunday session. Can't wait for the next one.
Yeah, which will sadly be a little bit longer. DoubleDM scheduling. Niels, did you already put your votes into the survey?
No, I did not. I have to check my calendar. But
okay, perfect. Live scheduling of actual play recordings here. Okay, no, enough from actual plays. Niels, how was the rest of your week? Anything TTRPG related? Anything fun?
Anything fun? Yes. Anything TTRPG related? Sadly, not. Just something coming up on Sunday, the Cyberpunk Red session, if I remember.
Is it happening?
It's vague, so it may come up, it may not. I don't know.
I mean, there's a reason why we aren't recording on Sunday, and same reason is part of Cyberpunk.
Yeah, it just wasn't discussed in the Cyberpunk chat yet, right?
Yes.
No, but if that doesn't happen, then nothing comes up until next Tuesday for me. So yeah, but I cleaned my room and reorganized my room, and now it's good, or basically every room in my house. So now I'm ready to decorate the shit out of this place.
The shit out of.
Yeah. Now Emil can see it a bit. It's just a plain white wall behind me and nothing really in it in this room. So yeah, it's a blank canvas that I can now decorate to my desire.
What is it that your heart desires?
I have some pictures and posters and stuff that I want to get some frames for and hang on the walls and build a table where people can sit at, and yeah, that stuff. Basically, in one corner of this room, there will be a roughly 2 meter long table. That at least that's the plan. So I can have friends over and we can all sit there, eat and play tabletop role-playing games without all hurting our necks because we have to sit on a couch and look at each other and still care about what we eat because white couch. So yeah, no, that's not going to happen. So we can use possibly maps or not, I don't know, or at least place some chips in the middle of all. That was fun. Although I hate cleaning and reorganizing, it was still fun. Yeah. So how was your
live stream?
Yeah. Well, no.
Interesting. For me, nothing really. Monday we were both at a birthday party. Basically one of the birthplaces of DoubleDM.
Yeah, it was basically the birthplace, right?
More or less, right? It wasn't the explicit birthplace of let's do this. It was more, right, this is where
our discussion started.
Where the friendship started that would eventually blossom into
all this. Yeah.
140 episodes of this shit. We're so sorry, everyone.
Don't be, it's amazing. We talk bullshit every week. It's amazing.
No, but aside from that, I had a session on Tuesday, Tyranny of Dragons, where my players are still trying to convince the Metallic Dragon Council and made very great strides into convincing every single one of these dragons that maybe working together with the mortals, especially giving the mortals a chance to prove themselves instead of doing their decisive strike against the cold, it was fruitful. My players did a good job of convincing. They aren't done yet.
Sounds good.
There's like two or three things that the dragons still want to discuss. And for one is, for example, reassurance. We need to have some kind of safety measure that when we say we will be working under your guide, we will be supporting you, not we will be doing whatever we want to protect this world, but we will be helping you in your quest to do this. We want a reassurance that if we realize you failed, that we then get to do what we want to do. The players are going to be coordinating everything and leading the charge and making decisions. The dragons say, that is fine with us, but obviously, since they're the more powerful party, they want some kind of reassurance that if something happens, they get the right to still do what is necessary because they have to. Right? They are unable to say, we are not going to do what we think is necessary. Because for me, the idea, that metallic dragons can't do bad things, which is some kind of a mythos about these dragons. And it's stated in the book as well that some of them think metallic dragons can do no wrong because they're metallic dragons and have been created in the face of pure goodness. I was like, okay, sure. Every thought that these dragons have is connected to we can't do and think bad things. So everything I am conceiving has to be a good thing. That's not entirely true. They can think of bad things because, they're blinded in their judgment by their past experiences. These dragons still know we are created to do good, and we are willing to give you mortals the chance to prove that you haven't lost yet. But when the situation becomes more and more dire, we want some kind of reassurance that we can still try out, that we can then still do what we think must be done to save the future, Some of these dragons are more radical than others. They think that going to all-out war in an instant between the draconic races might be the best option right now. Players saying, don't do that. That will destroy very, very many civilians and civilizations. And they are saying, okay, I'm going to give you the chance. But if that doesn't happen, let's be real. Let me drop the nuke more or less. Because I don't want them to be just the epitomes of goodness. I want them to be good. Yes, they have good intentions, but their methods might seem a little bit radical for those that don't live as long as dragons do. Right? The dragon doesn't think in what is going to happen in the next 50 years. They're going to think what happens in the next 500 years.
And rebuilding something, if you have that much time, is doable, but not if you only have 10 more years.
Yeah.
That's a bit difficult to rebuild a whole civilization. But in 500 years, that's a different story.
Right? My players did their good job in convincing them that let us prove to you that the greatest weapons we as mortals have is hope and our undying resolve in this. The dragons went, okay, we can see that is something we do not possess because of how we were created. So we give you the chance to show us this. We are willing to help you because you seem to have the greatest intention just like us. Our methods are different. So we will do your method until we explicitly know your method isn't working anymore. And they want basically just an assurance against the character's arrogance. Because for them, it's okay to say, yeah, we're gonna wait a few more weeks before we do this to see if you guys are still up for the task when it comes to it. But we just want to have some kind of reassurance that when everything is lost and you should just accept defeat, that you're not arrogant in your ways like some dragons are, that you're saying, no, let us keep going. We can still fix this. When everyone knows you can't. That's how the dragons view this. So this is basically one of the last things. There might be still some concessions to be made so the players can convince the other dragons to do something for them in even greater detail. But yeah, next session in 2 weeks is going to be the last session of that chapter. And then my players are basically only finishing up quest lines before they get to the final confrontation.
Oh, damn.
They still have to get to Neuron Vein of the Elves as their next quest. That is already decided that they're going to do that because he has the green dragon mask and they want the mask and to figure out how the masks work and stuff like that. So the cult attacks are basically all done. I think I've did my third attack against my players already, or the second one at least in. And then there's only like 2 chapters really left in the book before the final confrontation chapter. But also there's still 3 chapters extra to be done, basically character chapters. Because 3 of the 4 players still have to do some kind of character development for the before the final confrontation.
And how long has that campaign been going?
Oh, November 2018.
Okay.
Is when we started.
So about 5 years.
Yeah, and we are planning on finishing next year. Now, some people might go, oh my God, that's so long for such a book. Yeah, to be fair, there were also we've played for actively probably only 3.5 years. Because of the COVID pandemic, we stopped for 3 to 4 months before we decided to move online. Then we had 2 very big breaks of 6 to 7 months in between at points. And yeah. And then also, we just like more bloated campaigns where one session, 4 hours, is just used to follow a quest line that doesn't even exist in the book. Yeah, for example, raising dragons. That was not part of the book, but there were dragon eggs, and my players got to the dragon eggs and said, we want to keep them. That is an entirely new quest line that I have to figure out.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's that. And besides that, I had nothing else going on in my week.
So I think we're ready to jump into the topic.
Yeah, I think we're ready to be discussing world building fundamentals. See you after a break. Hey listener, how are you enjoying the show so far? Tell us about it in whatever way you see fit. Go to our social media pages and add us or DM us about your favorite episode of the show. We would love to hear from you on what impact our show might have had on your home games. Or you could review us on your podcast app of choice and leave us a nice message with a 5-star review. And if you want to go above and beyond, bring a friend into the fold. Tell them about our show and refer us to them so they can get a piece of the pie as well. Thank you for listening to DoubleDM and joining us on this incredible journey.
So Emil, I was thinking.
So Nils.
With building worlds, and as you do in TTRPGs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about some different aspects of world building itself. I want to talk to you a bit about more rough directions or rough things that you should think about when you build locations or cities or everything in your world, basically. And way this thought came to mind was through economy, because I read a post recently and experienced it firsthand by playing TTRPGs. In most TTRPGs, economy is just completely weird. It's always kind of weird when you think about it on a logical, only based in real world standpoint. But from a game standpoint, it kind of makes sense because you have to kind of balance the prices and all of that to an adventuring party that has basically 3 dragons hordes at their disposal. So it makes sense that some things are more expensive in a game sense, but on a world building level, it might not. Or it mostly doesn't.
What you're talking about is very interesting to me because, yes, there is a disparity. And there's also this, like, it's all kind of weird and strange and not really that graspable. Now, let's be real. Real world economies aren't graspable to anyone else as well. I mean, if you look at the stock market, most people won't be able to tell you what all of this shit means. We got that part of world building trying to emulate the real world kind of right because no one understands anything anyway.
True.
Okay, but jokes and fun aside, what you're talking about, right? Your adventuring party, you kind of need to balance your economy to fit an adventuring party and also kind of the next normal person commoner. I feel that that's very interesting to talk about because it's a misconception of the stuff, in my opinion, because, well, it's not a misconception, it's a misplacement, I think, because your economy works depending on a whole lot of different factors, including how much people are able to spend, and whoever sets the price to what they know the thing that they are selling is worth. Supply and demand are the things controlling the price of something. Now, what you're saying is true, that a lot of people are looking at, for example, their adventuring party in D&D that has like 5,000 gold pieces. But I think when you look at the adventuring party, how much gold pieces they have and how much a commoner should have, and there's too big of a gap there, then that shouldn't necessarily reflect in the economy. Because it's not that your economy is weird. Or, well, it is. Part of your economy is weird. But not the pricing. The amount the people hold is wrong. Either your commoner needs a lot more gold, or your party is just one of the extremely 1%. And you need to think about that. So when you create locations, what I often always like to do is, first of all, take player characters out of the equation. So in this location, let's look at one location. It's a medium-sized town that has started as a mining town. Now it has already also includes a little bit of factories or production places. It has farms in the local areas below the hills and mountains where they are sitting and stuff like that. It's a medium-sized town, has 10,000 citizens or something. It's there. It's on the map, basically. And I look at this town and go, okay, how much does the average person make? Give me some kind of value, Niels, here. Doesn't have to be gold and silver for D&D. It can be anything, really.
In what time frame do you want? Per week, per month?
Let's say per month.
Per month.
It's what we humans are mostly accustomed to, so let's just go with that.
Okay, let's say just the baseline.
How much do they make? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, let's go with roughly 10 gold pieces a month.
Okay, so I know 2 things about that. The average person has at least 10 gold pieces a month. Mm-hmm. That's something that we just established. And the second thing is, everything a person needs in a month needs to be roughly around 10 gold pieces. And that is including already supplying these people's hobbies and the once a week ale with your friends at the tavern, for example.
The recreational activities overall.
Recreational activities included, right? Mm-hmm. So let's say this person spends 9 gold pieces a month and takes 1 home to save. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's that. And that's obviously a super basic overview. And this has nothing to do with how real economies actually work, but it gives you something to work with. And that is something that you need. Because now you know the average person in this world, in this town, sees 10 gold pieces a month. Maybe this is divided into 2 payments, 5 gold pieces every 2 weeks or something, right? Mm-hmm. Or it's weekly payments of 2 to 3 gold pieces a week or something. It doesn't matter. But this person sees average of 10 gold pieces a month. Obviously, the sellers of goods know that. They also know how much of the thing that they are selling can they provide, how valuable it is, how much it costs to make, and stuff like that. And that all accumulates in the price of the item these people want. For example, this farmer needs new farm equipment. This might not be a necessarily monthly purchase, but let's just say that once a month, this person purchases a new tool. Yeah, a new tool. And let's say these new tools, they cost about 1 gold piece for the month. So this person has to pay 1/10 of the entire wealth for this month to get this new tool. That is also not representative of real world economy yet, not in the slightest, or even of an actual economy, how it should work, even in a fantasy setting. But what you know with that is that when a player character waltzes in with 500 gold pieces in their bag because they just looted the last dungeon, that tells you exactly how wealthy this person is. And now the thing is, either this adventurer can just buy everything that they want by the normal price, or, for example, if there is a lot more people running around with this amount of gold, prices will go up because the sellers know these people have more gold and I want their gold. So let's raise the prices for the stuff they want. I think it's not necessarily that the economy is always weird because player characters have so much more gold than the average commoner, but more you need to think about how much gold you even want to hand out to your players in the first place. Because that disparity with the 500 gold pieces can be changed through a number of means. And I think changing it in the economy phase of this entire thing is wrong. Because then you raise the prices for all items so that the players actually lose a little bit of their gold or care about what they buy. In turn, that however means that all the average farmers just cannot afford the equipment all of a sudden. That won't work because the city itself will bleed itself dry in that second.
Yeah.
When the adventurers stay in the city for like 2 weeks, all prices skyrocket because the sellers want more of the money that is currently entered the pot of the city, more or less. Yeah, it's gonna bleed those dry that do not make that much. Right? Another way to see this is, the ultra rich are destroying the poor people or the average working class people because, well, they have just so much more money that prices skyrocket just because of their existence. About the stuff that they want, people raise prices about this stuff. The sellers will raise the prices of the stuff these wealthy people have so they can, first of all, become part of the wealthy class. And second of all, because they want the money of the wealthy so they can become part of the wealthy. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think when you world build and think about that, you should think about the exact disparity, how the world interacts regarding that disparity.
Yes, you have the chance when you know upfront roughly how much the average person makes in your setting. And that is something that's, I think, way more important than economy itself. When when you read a world building guide somewhere and they're talking about a kingdom and they're talking about economy, what does this kingdom export and import? That's important, yes. But what is way more important to me is how much does the average person make in the setting? How much gold, how much money is in the system? Because sure, your players might go delving for treasure and going to a dragon's hoard and something. And yes, they should be rewarded if they get to these points where they are supposed to get these riches. Yes, but you need to think about how many riches are there. If, for example, a kingdom has been ravaged by a dragon that has been taking fees from everyone that crosses the only bridge connecting the upper part and lower part of this continent or something, then this dragon would still ask for a lot of money. But the dragon itself would know that he cannot ask for more than most people have. Well, he can, but at the end of the day, he will not get more than what is able to be given to him, even if the people give him everything, right?
Yeah.
If everyone gives the dragon their 10 gold pieces a month, the dragon will still not have more than 10 gold pieces a month per citizen.
Exactly.
When you create your rewards and your loot, and especially your gold and also your magical items, think about how much the average person makes, because that gold needed to have come from somewhere.
I think it's always some sort of comparison job to do when you world build in general, being it now with rewards or descriptions or everything along those lines, is always compare it to the things that you've already built or want to build in the future, and you'll find a way that works for everything, because that should somehow, in some way, shape or form, at least loosely correlate with one another.
Yeah.
Of course, there are local differences in income and all of that, obviously, but at least the rough outline should be somewhat similar. And I think that this goes for income or available gold or riches or descriptions itself. One town right next to the other should have somewhat a resemblance of the same geological features in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, it's not the same exact trees, but the same tree type. If you're having two villages right next to each other, two timber villages, and one is in a jungle and the other one is in a boreal needle forest, but they're only 1 day apart. But if you compare it to another, one is purely needle trees, and the other one is maybe some normal leaf trees in there as well. That works. Sure. It's somewhat similar. And that's the important thing, to compare it to each other.
Especially when it comes to world building, looking at what you've already done will help you a lot in creating what is to come, because it will give you basically a roadmap. You have built this kingdom. Okay, your players are in this kingdom. They are in this certain town. You've built this town, and their players are venturing north. And you have already said that the north of this kingdom is a little bit frostier, because this kingdom is a northern kingdom. Its northern regions are very frosty. And you have already also said there is a mountain range up north, so that's there as well. So you know that. Now, when you are creating another town that they are entering in, where you are saying, okay, here I want the next adventure to take place. The players are entering this village, blah, 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 and they have to do this and this. Cool. But you know, your players are traveling into a mountainous region that is frosty from a place that is this and this, from this city. And with that, you basically give yourself a lot of attributes that you can not necessarily specifically assign to that new location that you're creating, but that can help you understand what other things you should apply to this location. So you know, okay, the players are venturing north into a frosty, rocky, mountainous region. Cool. But this village isn't necessarily in the mountains, but it is still in a frosty region. So maybe it is in a frosty, hilly region, right? This is basic stuff. Most people already do this. But I think that you can apply this to basically everything. Look at what is already there from what you've already established. Something that the players have perceived or have taken note of or know about, or also maybe explicitly stated that they want that. From that information, let inform what happens in the future of the game that you're playing.
Yeah.
Fun thing is, you can, in fact, because it is your world, say that there are two villages next to each other, 1 day's travel apart. One is in the jungle, one is in the needle forest. Because it is your setting, it is your fantasy setting. However, when you say that, that is way more important than not saying this, because it doesn't make sense. Let's be real. This is a fantasy or whatever world with magic and dragons. It doesn't fucking matter what makes sense or not. But when you do something that should feel off to the players, because this one is in the jungle and now you're venturing basically into a frosty needle forest, focus on that disparity. Make that felt. That is one of the greatest assets you can use in your world building. Why is this? How does it affect the region? How do the people deal with it? You shouldn't ask yourself, does this make sense? This is secondary, basically, because you can always make up a solution with magic. Or this and this and this. And you can make up a solution. And I'm a defender of just make fucking shit up if you want, right? Do whatever works for you in that moment. Do whatever you think is fun in that moment. That includes just saying that the jungle is next to a needle forest. However, when I do that and when you do it, you should as well not necessarily find an explanation, but find the effects of that. Because those are what the players are interested in, not the explanation of why this is. Sure, they might ask, but they only ask because they don't understand. What is more important to them and their play and their role play is, this jungle is a magical jungle that cannot be cut down. It has survived ice ages in the specific location, even though the region around it is completely frosted over. That is way more interesting than saying, this is weird.
And that's what I mean when I say focus on comparisons when you world build. It doesn't matter if there are differences or if there aren't, or major differences or not, as long as you know how to use them in a way that makes sense for the game itself, that engages your players, that engages you yourself. Because when you build something, and I've been guilty of that as well, you build something that on paper doesn't make any sense, even though, there's magic and blah, 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 but you kind of feel intrigued to make it work anyways. Build a reason for it to work and for your players to explore that reason, and so on and so forth. Disparities or similarities can engage players and yourself as well to venture forth and just keep on exploring these differences or these similarities. Differences right next to each other work perfect for that. But similarities for regions that are really fucking far away work as well for that exact same reason. Parallels are always, hey, I've seen that before. Wait a second. Why does it feel kind of familiar? Well, because it is, but
because it is supposed to be.
Exactly. It's supposed to be feeling familiar. But why does it feel familiar here? Why is it here?
Exactly.
And this is the fun thing, because just building upon the same thing that you've done 2 continents over, basically. You're doing the same thing, but in a place where it feels off. And then engage your players to find out why it feels off, or even yourself, because you don't know yourself. Because what I like to do is just make shit up, as Emil just said, through play, explore why it is there, or why this stuff happened the way it happened, or even let your players influence the world itself, making something that is usually normal only for the continent 2 continents over, but not here. And your players interact with the world and create something with you that resembles that, or something along those lines. Letting your players influence the world and creating similarities and differences on a world building level itself, I think, is something that you should think about doing, or in general, let your players influence the world that you're playing in, because that's what we all want to do.
Well, something you said that is very important when it comes to world building, and what I want to do with my world building is, right, we focus on the question when your players say, why is it like that? I think this question can be asked in 2 different contexts. One is a player questioning the world building itself. Why is this jungle next to the needle forest? Why is the architecture here the same as we've seen 2 continents over, right? Basically, as a question directed at you, at the GM, of explain yourself, please. Why? I don't like this I don't understand it. Obviously, it's not done with the malicious intent that I've portrayed it here with, but sometimes players ask you or just themselves, why is it this way? But what you want is them to ask this question in context number 2 as characters, because that then means they are invested in exploring that why. If your characters are asking themselves, wait, where have I seen this before? Why is it familiar? Why is this certain structure? Why is this certain architecture? Right? Your players have been exploring temples on one continent and have now gone over to a different continent to focus on something entirely different, on a diplomatic conflict overseas. And they encounter another one of these structures. For one, it's also part of adventure writing, obviously, but you are giving them a subtle world building hint that there is maybe more to what they already know. And you do that through the world building of portraying this as part of this. Another thing that I think for world building is very important for building locations and focusing on stuff and how you make your worlds fun, engageable, whatever, is obviously the people.
Yeah.
Especially the cultures, right?
Hell yeah.
You need to focus on people because they are what your characters will interact with. You need to have an understanding of who these people are and what they value, what they are doing, and how they behave. You don't need to know this for every single citizen on a one-to-one basis. But if you are creating a little village in the mountain ranges that is focused on woodworking, you need to understand the general profile of the people living there. That can include the demographic is made up of mostly these types of lineages and people. It's mostly made up of people that have lived here for a long time and there's not many people that start a life here new. This is an old village with old people in it, but also that includes how do these people react? Do they have special sayings? Do they have a certain slang or dialect that they use?
Yeah, and I mean, people, NPCs in general, just bring your world to life. They are a way for you as a GM to interact with your players as well. Not just the players interacting with your world, but you as a GM are portraying these, not only the world, but the characters in it. And therefore, you have a way to interact in a way that you wouldn't have if there weren't any people, NPCs, creatures, or anything like that in that. And knowing how they behave and maybe even why they behave like that is a way for you to show what you have built and interact with your players yourself. Because I can say as a GM, when I world build my worlds, I want to talk about them because I built that and I want to talk about it. It's just fun to talk about the things that you made. It's the same for when I play a character. I want to talk about my backstory because I built that backstory. I want to give other people the opportunity to explore that with me together.
Yeah.
And I think the same goes for GMs when they world build. They want to give the players a chance to interact with the world and find out more about it.
Yeah.
And having ways to do that actively, proactively yourself in a way that makes sense, or you can reference back to how something would behave, is just a good or a good thing to think about, because it's a way for you to show and tell what you've built and let others other than yourself experience all the little details that you might sprinkled in that aren't necessarily very important for any specific part of that adventure or that plot or that world in general, but were just fun for you to do and might be fun for your players to experience.
Yeah. The most important prerogative when it comes to world building for me is, why do I need this? And this is the question I ask myself, right? Why do I need to create this kingdom when it is supposed to be a location my players are gonna enter, or that at least affects a certain location my players are in? But I don't need to know what is happening on the other side of the planet, basically, for this world. If I do need to know, because my players are because my players are especially asking for it, or because, well, that entity on the other side of the world is affecting where my players are currently, or my players in general, then yes, I need to know. And then I do it. But other than that, everything basically, it's one of the fun things. I've recently played a game called Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood.
Okay.
It is a great game. I really, really love the game, and I'm going to play it again probably in a week or two. It's a game where you are playing as a fate witch. You're playing a witch. You're playing a witch. It's a game where you play a witch that has been exiled for 1,000 years to live on a comet in space because you predicted with your tarot readings the fall of your coven. Through the game, and this is a spoiler for the game, and I urge everyone that wants to play the game, and I urge everyone to play the game, basically. This is a spoiler. You're not reading fate. You're writing it.
Ooh, okay.
But the only limitation you have, you cannot write something that is being perceived or has been perceived. So you're not only writing the future, but you can write specific events into the past, as long as you're not overwriting something that has been perceived by someone.
Okay. Interesting.
And this is how I think I look at my world building. Only things that have been perceived or are being perceived matter in this moment and cannot be changed.
Yeah, makes sense.
Everything in the past that wasn't perceived then or is being perceived now is changeable anyway. And the future, because it isn't perceived, is changeable. And I'm not applying this to basically a timeline, but a horizontal flat map of my world. I know where my players are. I know where my players have been. I know basically everything they have perceived. I know in my big GM brain, or well, rather my notes tell me what they've perceived because it is in my notes.
But now that you mention it, I do the same thing without really thinking about it or having.
I think everyone does.
Because now that I think about it, how often I have changed history to fit the narrative better, or to fit a character better, or change the history of this specific place with one of my players to make this character that they want to play work.
Or even better. Not just work, but better even, right?
Yeah, exactly. To make it the way that they want to play it. It's just, I can't count that high. Or, I mean, no. I can probably, but
it is just the way it is. And I think when I read the game tells an incredible story and stuff like that. And aside from all that, because I don't want to talk about the game that much more, because I really recommend it to everyone that is listening to also play the game. But the game itself has just this one part. Basically, the character you play is a GM that can alter the world to their whim. And exactly that you are doing as a GM. You can alter the world to your whim. And yes, you can alter the world to your whim. No one please come in here that you need to have some kind of consistency in your world. You do only in one point, and that is when your players are perceiving that thing. For example, I have my word min. It is a world where I will stage every single one of my future and current D&D campaigns or fantasy campaigns even. It is my world, it is what I want to play, and it has a place for everything. And that kitchen sink, it has a place for everything, isn't just meaning this world is big enough so I can put everything I want in here. No, it also means that if I want, I can just change facts that have already happened in other campaigns for this certain campaign. And basically create a new instance of the world. These things being perceived are different. Or for example, I've had 2 campaigns in that world, or 1 campaign in that world currently running, another one being in the works, basically, and a lot of one-shots all around the place. And those one-shots focus on specific locations, for example, and those locations existed before only in thought in the campaign before that. I knew that these places were a thing, but other than that, I didn't know what these places were, how they worked, what went on in these places, because it didn't matter to that campaign. And everything that doesn't matter to your campaign is only gray fog blobs that do not exist currently.
Yeah, it's the same thing for me, because in one of my or in my main world currently, in my main fantasy world, I've started a campaign. We decided then on what type of setting we want to have. And because in this world, I had a rough map, but that's about it. Yeah. What goes on where is completely changeable. So we decided on a setting. Then after that, we decided where to play, in what geographical location, because I made those beforehand because I just was in the mood of drawing maps. And so I made a map. Yeah. And then they decided, hey, this cluster of 4 islands, this little kingdom there, that sounds like a good idea. And then I started building that specific kingdom. Nothing else. Nothing else really mattered. So I built that, and then, okay, what does this need? Some sort of government. Okay, how do these people live? What is their day-to-day, basically? How do they get around? What is the specific geographical locations for each own island? Because there were 4, so I had a lot to play with and a lot of differences that I can portray in the same region.
And again, it would be very fun if all 4 islands would be a little bit different, because otherwise, let's be real, we want our games and our worlds to be a little bit over the top, right?
Of course.
Of course. Just play a little bit into those cliches of, this island kingdom has 4 different islands and each island is different for whatever reason, and that basically makes this kingdom, the kingdom of 4 islands.
Yeah, basically. Then that I want to base my campaign or the story itself of, obviously it depends on what my characters do or my players do and whatnot. In my experience, when I throw plot hooks at them, they all grab them all and see how many they can follow at the same time without being overwhelmed or something, and then prioritizing after that. But they usually just pick everything up and see what works for them best. So I have no problem really with giving them things to do. But what I plan on doing is that every arc of that campaign focuses on one island. So I get them exploring all of the islands separately, and then hopefully can work all together and link everything that has happened together. But I want to show the difference in not necessarily people, but locations or feelings or situations or intensity for everything on every single island. That's what I focused on world building, because I started with the island they were starting on, obviously. I didn't have...
I started with the starting island,
Basically this, I didn't start with every other island and then decided what to do next, but I started with the start and then left the others a bit blank. Obviously, there's this town, roughly.
Right, their influence is there, but it doesn't matter what exactly that influence means. You just need to know how they are influencing what is currently perceived, because
exactly
everything only matters when it is perceived. Quantum theory. So every world building is basically just quantum theory. So write that down, go into physics and study quantum physics so you can know how to actually build your worlds. But it is something that you do, in fact, right? Like, sure, some of the stuff that is not necessarily being perceived right now is being written down by you as a GM, right? Aren't you the one perceiving it then? The thing is, sure, you can obviously also create something that is not being perceived at all right now by the characters and players and the table and the game and stuff like that, and say, but I built that, it's there. Sure, it is. How does it influence what is currently happening? When you build that, you want it to be perceived, so you make a way for it to be perceived. perceived. And if you make a way for it to be perceived, it is being perceived, meaning it is being perceived.
Yeah,
it influences something. My mathematical proof is any world building that you need to do is the one that needs to be perceived. Any world building that you do that isn't necessary should be made perceivable and therefore necessary.
So everything you do is needed.
Exactly. Everything you want to do to world build is necessary. Everything you need to do for world building is necessary, but it is the same. Because it doesn't matter where you start, it doesn't matter where you end, it only matters that you do. And one big thing you can do. There is no, I'm not good enough at this, I don't write or something. If you are the improv type GM that doesn't write down any world building information, does the game work for you? Yeah. So you don't need to write stuff down. It's not about the writing down of the stuff. It is once again about this stuff being perceived. When you 5 minutes before the game come up with, okay, my players start in a town built out of old pirate ships that is basically floating around on the sea.
Amazing, by the way.
It is being perceived. You didn't have to do all of the world building beforehand because it is all that matters right now. That information. And from that, you draw whatever else needs to be perceived for the game to work.
Yeah, and it's a bit like in video games, the render distance. I mean, you decide how high your render distance is, but it doesn't matter how much is there theoretically beyond that render distance because no one can see that anyways. And therefore, if it's there, cool, it's there, but it doesn't influence me in any way. But if I see it, then it gets important and then it is needed.
And with what you just said, it is like render distance in a video game. There's this fog around you that you cannot see further than. Not necessarily in exactly explicit terms, there's a fog around the players, but on the meta level, they don't know what is behind, what is on that different island, or they don't know what is on that specific mountain or something. When you look at it and make it feel like that render distance of a video game, what effect do you evoke? An explorative effect in your players. They want to know, especially if they start perceiving the mountain and do not fully grasp why it is there and everything, and basically have all their questions answered. They perceive the mountain. They know there is a mountain, but it just entered the view. It just became part of that perceived reality. It just became part of the perceived reality. And now influence takes place. And the influence of this mountain is, I'm currently thinking about One Piece, so it's reverse mountain. A mountain where the rivers flow uphill, as far as I know, right? The way to the Grand Line. You don't tell your players why the rivers are floating uphill. You just tell them they do. They perceive that. That is something they see. That is something they hear from people talking about it. And then you evoke an effect in them if they are the invested player that you are probably having, because let's be real, everyone has invested players if you're having fun playing the game. That's the main part. They are going, why? And you go, you don't know, you have to find out. And they go, okay, let's find out. And therefore you bring them to a place where they can learn more about this perceived reality and understand. They want to understand. And with that, you then bring in another question into the fold, another thing about the perceived reality that they don't understand. And therefore it keeps on turning and turning and turning, and to create your world the way you want to, and further and further and further and further.
Yeah, and basically it's kind of like creating plots in a way when you world build, is you create world hooks, you could say, that your players want to explore further. Like the mountain where you see a mountain where the rivers flow uphill. Okay, cool. Then let's go on with that. You might not have created anything for that currently, but then you obviously, because it gets into the perceivable area, you need to build something. There is a need for something to be there because it is perceived. There can't be nothing. And then from there, they see another thing that they want to explore, or perceive another, or hear a sound, or witness a story, or anything along those lines. It's the same thing for creating plots or plot points, because you just throw random shit at your players and see what sticks. The same goes for world building. You build towns, locations, feelings, emotions, and throw them at your players and see what sticks. And then they tell you what you should work on because they want to explore that even further.
And I also feel something that we can talk about the maybe even grander designs in your world building. For example, gods, cosmic entities, the stars, the night sky, the extraterrestrial planes or whatever, right? Those things should be even weirder than you are currently making them.
Yeah.
The plane of fire shouldn't just be a world made of fire. Or, well, it should be a world made of fire, but not just in the sense of basically it's just another planet where everything is on fire, but way more weird than that in whatever direction you want to go.
Yeah, weirdness is amazing.
Like, you have the possibility to make your stuff great. And for example, also one thing that we probably have to make an entire episode about is pantheons and gods.
Oh, yeah.
Because one thing that I learned about my world building myself when I did it before was that every religion I created is, well, Christian inspired because it is the reference frame that I have. That is an incredibly close-minded view on world building because religions do not come in one size fits all. I can't make a pantheon of gods that basically kind of still works like Christianity. That doesn't work because Christianity at its is a monotheistic religion, and a pantheon of gods cannot be monotheistic.
Yeah.
So there needs to be a difference, and you do not have to apply worldly concepts to these otherworldly beings, especially if in the context of your world they do exist. Per proven fact. We don't know if there is an actual god sitting amongst the skies. Some people believe in it, some people don't. But in those worlds, maybe there's irrefutable proof, maybe just on a meta level, that there is a god or even several gods. And that alone would already change the fact how religion works. And that is something that you need to think about. You cannot take the world as reference frame for the stuff that you are doing when the reference frame is already completely broken apart by how your world is, how you want your world to work. You want there to be like 15 gods in this world. Sure, that's okay. You can do that. But you need to think about the implications of 15 gods existing and basically being existent. Not about people believe in 15 types of different gods. No, you are saying there are 15 gods. What does that mean?
Yeah.
And that's why I think a lot of these bigger concepts that basically tie into this is a fantasy world, magic is real, dragons are real, gods are real. All of these things that are not like the real world, you need to make them weirder than you think you need to make them.
Yes.
Because that makes them more fun even.
Just weirdness all over the place is amazing. The most fun TTRPG sessions that I had were the ones that were on paper the weirdest. The more laughter and fun and enjoyment and engagement we had at our tables, usually. If something doesn't make any sense at all, but kind of does, this is the sweet spot for me. Well, yeah, it makes sense in regards to the world that we are playing in this TTRPG, but it doesn't really make any sense at all when you compare it to the real world. This is the spot for at least for me and my tables usually. Yeah, because it's for us, TTRPGs are a way of escapism. Yeah, in a way, and you don't want there to be a perfect resemblance of the world because
that you're escaping from.
Exactly, that wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah,
being some types where you can ground yourself in with the things that you've perceived before in this world, but are just complete and utter bullshit usually. Yeah. This is the way because it's just fun to experience and do bullshit that you can do because of magical powers, science fiction inventions that aren't really a thing, or just being able to drive a car with a fusion reactor in there that is basically nail pin size because it exists, period.
For that is actually a fun thing, right? Something that you need to be aware of when building your world, especially when you're in session talking to your players about the world or presenting the world. Everything you state is a fact, at least as long as you state it like a fact. And I think when you're stating something that isn't necessarily that correct, or maybe just perceived something by, for example, a person, when your players are reading a book, that book has been written by a person in that world that has perceived something in that world. Then yes, you can make a difference, but then you should make that clear. And that is by, in this book, this author writes this and this is true. That way you tell your players exactly, it's not you giving them a fact that they are now supposed to accept. You're giving them something that their characters might accept as fact because of this author.
Yeah.
But when you are just talking to your players and saying, for example, yes, on this mountain, all the rivers flow uphill, they are perceiving it as that, right? You are the one building the experience. So if you say that, your players will believe you. They will take it as a fact. And that is a power you hold as a game master that is very fun to use, but also be careful with it because it can lead to miscommunication sometimes if you say something wrong and your players understand you wrong. and then something builds off of that in a wrong way that you didn't want to have in the first place, but it happens sometimes. So just be careful in the presentation of your world, because everything you do present is taken as what it is.
In that regard, I don't have a specific example of this, but I know in my heart that I have experienced that miscommunication, but because I wasn't too stiff with my views of my own world, it was a lot of fun because we all changed everything about it to make it work anyways. There was a lot of miscommunications. I misunderstood my players misunderstood me, but we all made it still work in the most fantastical, weird way that could have happened, and therefore is just an amazing experience. And I know it happened once, twice, or even 3 times. I don't know, but I know it happened. But, I don't have a specific example. But something of miscommunication, as long as you talk openly about it, can lead to something even greater in some instances. It doesn't have to, and as per usual with miscommunication, being able to talk openly about all of this, especially in TTR or everywhere, but in TTRPGs being a communication medium, talking about all the things that happen is important. So if you notice something like that, just talk to your players and everything will be all right.
Yeah.
That's just the thing that is TTRPGs. If you notice something that is wrong, talk to your players about it and everything will be all right. Yeah.
I think this was a very unstructured episode.
Yes.
But it was still, so. I think it was still something that is very valuable, because it was once again nailing the point of what you should actually do for world building, for when you are world building, because sometimes I get lost in what should I do for world building? Do I need to do world building? And I think those questions of doubt don't need to happen in the first place. I won't eliminate them from my own thinking, but I think that I have gained a little bit of reassurance again.
Yeah, and one thing that I have gained reassurance on is that even though my thoughts are completely scrambled at some point, just following one string and from there to another, especially for example, in world building, just works out in the end.
Yeah.
So no self-doubt, because you can't completely negate it, but it all works out. The same thing is if you jump from one place to another in just with a snap, so be it. Just enjoy the ride, right?
Yeah.
And with that, I don't have anything else.
I don't have anything else.
So thank you everyone for listening, and hear you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of DoubleDM. It appears you liked this one. What we had to say and our advice helped you. Why not show us how we helped you in a rating, or even write a review detailing us how we helped? You can do this on the platform that you are listening on right now. It's just a few clicks, doesn't take long, and helps us out. It gets us out there and our advice into more ears of more people. Thanks again for listening and joining us on this amazing journey. Have a great day, and hear you on the next one. Bye-bye.